In the ruins of an old city, Milo tells a drone that he's the last human left and begs his viewers not to forget about humanity. Then he looks at the mark on his hand and remembers how it all started. The year is 2016, and the world is suffering from wars, poverty, and general decay under the system. Milo is just a young wheelchair-bound child in New York studying to be an astrophysicist. Meanwhile, on a farm in Missouri, Ricky loses the signal on his phone, not noticing that a plane is suddenly landing nearby. At that moment, all across the world, machines start failing at the same time. Cell signals are jammed, and planes must land whenever they can, which causes panic in the city. The sky starts fogging over, and suddenly a fleet of enormous spaceships are blocking out the sun. While the military gets ready and people panic all over the media, citizens begin having weird visions of their deceased loved ones appearing in front of them. These illusions are caused by Corellin, the alien supervisor for Earth from a race known as Overlords. He explains that they came to put an end to suffering, injustice, hunger, and sickness, and that a new version of Earth known as Utopia will be the new law of the land. As days start to pass, the aliens keep their word, and wars are dropped all over the world. Reporters in shock record the unbelievable fact that old enemies are now dropping weapons and holding hands. People in power aren't very happy about this, since wars have always been a lucrative business for them. In Missouri, Ricky's neighbors are worried about how they should proceed, but Ricky points out aliens have only been helping so far, so they should sit patiently and wait because it doesn't look like an invasion. Later in the evening, Ricky and his wife Ellie notice that all the appliances inside the house are going haywire. Suddenly the house starts shaking, so the couple takes their dog and go hide in the cellar. At that moment, a light begins glowing around the house, and a mysterious force removes the screws from the door so the light can reach Ricky. As the house around him begins coming apart, Ricky comes outside and finds a huge drone waiting for him. Only when Ricky agrees to climb aboard does the spacecraft return his house to its proper place. While a giant spaceship appears above the White House, Ricky is taken away by the droid, which suddenly teleports him into the room of a fancy hotel in New York. This brings back memories of when Ricky spent his honeymoon here with his deceased wife, and he realizes it's an illusion. Suddenly the disembodied voice of Corellin starts talking and he asks Ricky to be the ambassador between the Overlords and the Earthlings. At first Ricky freaks out, saying someone like a politician should do this, but Corellin points out they're corrupted and Ricky earned the trust of his neighborhood in a fair way. Then Corellin gifts Ricky a mysterious gadget without telling him what it is. Meanwhile in the White House, a mother raises her sick baby toward the spaceship. Soon afterward, government officials and the press shows up at Ricky's farmhouse to cover the first alien abduction. At that moment the drone drops Ricky and leaves, so government agents quickly surround him and demand to have the gadget, threatening with violence. Ricky refuses, and Ellie comes with a camera to record any possible case of brutality. The agents still keep their guns out and Ricky has no choice but to hand in the gadget. As they open it, the baby in Washington magically gets healed. Hours later, the same news comes from all over the world. Diseases are slowly disappearing, even the incurable ones. Ricky is invited to the White House to give a speech to the people of Earth, and he introduces himself as the ambassador. However, Ricky soon gets nervous because he can't answer any of the questions reporters have for him, and they don't like it when he says Corellin feels the world is not ready to see him yet. From then on, whenever Corellin needs to talk to Ricky, he picks him up in the drone and shows the hotel illusion. As months pass, the Overlords begin taking care of other problems like hunger and poverty, using Ricky to be the link between nations and establish better political relationships. Some people still aren't trusting though and think the aliens want them to lower their defenses for an invasion. A resistance movement called the Freedom League, funded by media tycoon Hugo, starts gaining followers and spreading doubt in Corellin's patronage, filling the streets with protests. Ricky tries to convince Corellin to show himself to gain people's trust, but he keeps turning him down. Meanwhile, Milo's great intelligence has earned him a full scholarship. He's always watching all the news about the aliens and figuring out how their technology works. One evening, Milo comes down the stairs on his own and finds his mother arguing with a dealer outside. The guy takes out a gun and hits Milo's mom, so Milo tries to come to her defense. This causes the dealer to shoot him in the chest. His mother rushes to hug him, but at that moment, a light beam appears from the sky. This light kills the dealer in seconds, then it heals Milo. Not only his wound is gone, now he can walk too. This incident is covered by the media and Hugo accuses the aliens of playing to be God. In Missouri, Ricky and Ellie have an argument because Ricky has been very absent lately, and Ellie isn't sure if they should get married after all. Suddenly Ricky hears his dog barking and some noises outside. When he comes out to investigate, he's suddenly knocked out and he disappears. Moments later, Ricky wakes up inside a van to discover he's been kidnapped by the Freedom League. He's taken to a remote base supervised and spends the night inside a cell. The next morning, while Ellie begs the aliens to bring her husband back, Ricky is taken to see Hugo, who wants to take back the power out of the Overlord's hands by destroying all the good things they've given humans. What Hugo doesn't know is that Corellin is secretly broadcasting this to the whole world. Ricky obviously refuses to help with such an awful plan, causing Hugo to order his men to kill him. When a bullet is about to hit Ricky, the aliens freeze time around him, interrupting the broadcast. The drone comes to pick Ricky up and he enters the illusion once more, where his dead wife is waiting for him. Ricky almost gives in to the temptation of staying with her, but he reminds himself it's just an illusion and returns to the farm with Ellie. The next day Ricky argues with Karelin because if the aliens see everything, they should have not let him get kidnapped in the first place. However, Karelin explains it was part of a plan to shame the Freedom League, which is now disbanding. He also says that the first stage is over and proceeds to fire Ricky. Desperate for answers, Ricky takes a picture of the mirror Karelin hides behind before he's taken back to the farm. Then Ricky and Ellie see the photograph of Karelin's face and agree he's right to hide what he looks like. While Ricky and Ellie begin planning their wedding, some religious groups still refuse to accept the aliens as their new leaders. Reporters announce that Hugo has ended things for himself, and Milo decides to study hard to be the first person to visit the aliens' planet. A decade later, Milo is a young man that graduated from MIT and works as an astrophysicist at the World Federation, which is the new unified government of Earth. Ricky and Ellie live happily married but are unable to have kids. Everywhere on Earth there's peace and prosperity thanks to advanced alien technology. Now that his goals of perfection have been achieved, Karelin finally decides to reveal himself. A huge event is organized at a stadium, and when the spaceship lands, two kids rush to bring Karelin out. To everyone's shock, Karelin turns out to look exactly like the devil. While some people are disturbed by this revelation, life continues as usual. Years pass and Earth has become a perfect paradise while the overlords watch them from their spaceship. There are renewable energies, peace, and health. However, Milo is worried about the future. Scientific inquiry is dying, and when all space programs are terminated, Milo loses his job. Then he takes a job offer at a research facility in Africa where he meets Rachel, whom he gets along with pretty well. One night, Ricky wakes up to find the light outside his house again. He follows the beam to the tool shed, where he's surprised to find Karelin waiting. Karelin apologizes to Ricky before confessing some big news. At that moment, Ellie comes out of the house and sees the drone fly away, but Ricky is still there. He tells her Karelin had only been checking on them, not mentioning the real conversation. The next day, people begin surrounding the farm, thinking Karelin visiting is some sign. Ellie demands the truth from Ricky, who explains Karelin only told him Earth will have a new destiny. Meanwhile, the African research facility suddenly starts shaking. Rachel notices all their animals panicking in their cages, and Dr. Boyce finds a new room in the building that the aliens instantly put there. When he opens it, he finds a glowing device that looks like a massive Ouija board, and he assumes Karelin wants them to talk to somebody. Later, when he researches the history of the Ouija board, Boyce discovers it used to be a tool of Satan because it revealed information that only God should know. Later that night, in a house in the American suburbs, Tommy is having nightmares and wakes up to see a light outside. The drone is flying around the house and directs its light beam to the stomach of Tommy's mother, Amy. After the drone leaves, Amy's husband Jake is woken up when he hears her repeat, "We have to save the children." Then she asks about Tommy, so Jake goes outside and finds him in the garage. The light shorts out when Jake tries to turn it on, and Tommy stares creepily at him as he says it will end and begin. At the same time, Amy says don't touch us in her room. Tommy repeats the same words and pushes his father away rather aggressively. The next day, Jake and Amy have an argument. Jake tells Amy that Tommy has been acting weird all day and he just walks around with an empty stare. He also points out that Amy often yells in her sleep, which she blames on stomachache. Sometime later, they bring Counselor Peretta, the child of a missionary struggling to find the place of her own faith in a time when God isn't needed. During the first session, Tommy tells Peretta he has terrifying apocalyptic visions. He can see a giant eye covering the sun, and he's sure they aren't just visions. He thinks he actually goes there. When Peretta asks too many questions, the voices in Tommy's head go crazy and he snaps, running away in panic as he hears a baby crying. When Peretta gets too close, an invisible force tightens the chain with the crucifix around her neck, almost killing her before she pulls it off. Then Tommy begins feeling better and touches Amy's stomach, saying the baby stopped crying. Amy is confused because she isn't pregnant while Peretta leaves the house in fear of what she saw. In the meantime, Milo tells Boyce he's seen lab and wild animals exhibiting creepy behavior with their eyes glowing green. However, Boyce seems only concerned with persuading Karelin to invite him to his exoplanet and wants his employees to behave not to scare Karelin off. At the farm, Ricky is trying to go through his day, but he keeps feeling pain in his arm. When people keep showing up outside the farm asking for alien news, Ricky goes outside to tell them off, but suddenly the veins in his arm get extra red and Ricky has a stroke. Later at the hospital, the doctor gives him some bad news. There was something in Karelin's ship that poisoned Ricky, leaving him with little time left. This explains why he and Ellie weren't unable to have children. After comforting her husband, Ellie goes home and surrounds herself with machines as she asks Karelin to talk to her, but he never answers. Meanwhile, Peretta goes to see a priest for answers. All this time she's been researching demons and the story of the devil, wondering what it meant for Karelin. Now she's more terrified than ever, but the priest tells her not to lose her faith. Milo and Rachel also argue about philosophy and religion, and Milo thinks humanity has drawings of creatures matching Corellin because they've always known the overlords would come to do good. 4 months later, Amy learns that she's pregnant after all. She starts to think of names, and when she finally decides on Jennifer, Tommy says the name aloud before she can. In the evening, Peretta shows up outside Tommy's house to pray for them, and the alien drone appears above her with a light beam. When Peretta raises her crucifix, the drone goes away and she rushes to the door to check on the family. She tries to warn them about upcoming evil, but they tell her they're fine and to go away. The next day, Peretta worries more when the news show that Corellin is leaving his prophet Ricky to suffer in the hospital. She decides to travel to the farm and show her support to the people camping outside the farm, also getting to befriend Ellie. In the meantime, Boyce prepares a special party event and sends an employee to invite Jake and his family with the excuse of a job interview. Boyce plays nice with everyone but also offers to show Amy around the place alone. Ricky ends up talking to Milo, who explains Boyce is actually shutting the facility down so there can't be any interviews. At that moment, Boyce announces a big surprise: Corellin has come to the party too. They explain that they've been shipping animals to Corellin's home planet to be installed in a zoo there. Milo asks Corellin why he killed scientific curiosity, and Corellin tells him that obsessing over science made humans too close to powers they can't control. Afterward, Boyce and Corellin take Amy to the chamber with the Ouija board, making her place her hand on it. This enables Corellin to communicate with the entity growing inside her and use it to blast a message to the skies in the form of a light beam with a symbol in it. Jake goes looking for Tommy, but the boy doesn't want to leave. In the chamber, Boyce's nose starts to bleed and Corellin talks to the creature inside Amy, saying it can't be a child or save anyone. Boyce worries about Amy because she looks in pain and reaches for her at the same time Jake reaches for his son. Amy and Tommy both say don't touch us and push the men away. Then Amy enters a trance and begins using the board to guide the light while Tommy runs to the roof, announcing that Jennifer is awake before falling. Corellin says Amy's job is done and that others will follow while Jake rushes to his son, only to find him hovering above the ground. He brings him into his arms and Tommy reveals to be afraid of Jennifer because she's too strong. Amy rushes to reunite with her family and together they leave the party, not wanting to answer Boyce's questions. On the trip back, Amy suffers from unbearable pain in her stomach. Meanwhile, Milo realizes the light beams Corellin uses are his people's alphabet, so he draws the symbol on a napkin and leaves the party to research it. Rachel follows him and finds him drawing the symbol on a star chart, revealing that it represents the constellation of the Carina system, the Overlord's home world. The excitement causes them to kiss. The next day, Corellin visits Ricky and Ellie again. He hands Ricky a vial of medicine to heal him, which is very rare and hard to make, but at that moment Peretta bursts in, accusing Corellin of being a liar. This makes Corellin confess that the illness didn't sterilize Ricky, Corellin did. He did this out of kindness because the Earth's days are numbered and it's always harder for people with children. While Ellie yells at him, Peretta grabs a shotgun and shoots Corellin, who falls to the floor in pain as he tells Ricky he only wanted to protect him from the pain. Feeling guilty, Ricky injects Corellin with the medicine, instantly curing him. Then Corellin tells a crying Peretta that her faith is poetry but still useless because nobody can stop what's coming. Later at home, Peretta sees the ghost of her mother and follows it until she unfortunately falls off the balcony. Meanwhile, Boyce realizes that Corellin had asked him for animals because he's making a new ark. At the local hospital, Amy gives birth to Jennifer, whose eyes glow in bright green. 4 years later, the children are stronger than any previous generation because they were brought up in a utopia. Milo, who is now dating Rachel, realizes humans have evolved and wonders what the next generation will be like. He's now in charge of studying the kids and their new development because they've discovered the new generation is being born with psychic powers, although so far they only use it for kiddie things. Meanwhile, Ricky is still alive thanks to some chips he connects to his arm, but he's still in pain all the time and he doesn't know how much time he has left. There's also a resistance forming in New Athens, where keepers of the old way of life are mobilizing and inviting everyone to join them before the end, although they can't explain what this end is. One night, Corellin visits Ricky and tells him what will happen to the world. He also says he can spare Ricky if he agrees not to stay here, but Ricky turns him down. The next day, Milo and Rachel find kids in the park acting weirdly. Suddenly children all around the world fall into a kind of trance, raising their right hands towards the sky and chanting Jennifer's name. Older kids actually show up at Tommy's house looking for their leader. Milo realizes all the children are connected and calls Jake to let him know while Tommy explains that Jennifer shows them visions of new worlds. Jake tries to tell the kids to go away, but they ignore him as more of them arrive to fill the streets. Amy checks on Jennifer, who says she sees it all and there's no need to feel afraid. While she uses her powers to talk directly into Tommy's and the children's minds, Jake decides it's time to move to New Athens. The kids are still blocking the streets, so Jennifer has to use her powers again to make them move. When they make it to New Athens, they discover the city matches the times before the aliens. It's polluted, overcrowded, smelly, and there's always death in some alley. Milo keeps calling Jake to talk about Jennifer, but Jake ignores his messages. Shortly after they arrive, the cops bring the family to meet Mayor Jerry, who expresses it's better to live with real free will than a utopia, and if New Athens ends up failing then he'd rather see it burn. Amy notices that the kids stare creepily at Jennifer here too. Later at their new home, Amy convinces Jake to talk to Milo for the sake of their daughter. Jake humors Milo's request to ask Jennifer a few questions, and as Milo asks about the future, the connection begins failing. Jennifer says she sees it all before her eyes start glowing and she shows Milo a vision of the destruction of the planet, which freaks him out. The call ends with Jennifer announcing that the end begins. Desperate to save Earth, Milo plans to sneak into the Overlord's spaceship with the next shipment of animals. Rachel reluctantly agrees to help but she's heartbroken that he's leaving. She shows him the way they put animals into status inside bags, which is terrifying to Milo but he's determined to do it anyway. Sometime later, Rachel sneaks Milo into the shipment truck, and after they kiss each other goodbye, she puts him to sleep inside the bag and successfully sneaks him into the spaceship with all the animals. At the farm, Ricky is suffering from unbearable pain and the chips don't help anymore. Ellie tries to help him, but she's devastated to hear Ricky say the name of his dead wife. Suddenly the room changes and Ricky finds himself in the hotel again, not noticing Corellin is there. He starts living through his old memories like they were real, but soon he begins sensing weird things around the room and hearing Ellie's voice on the radio. The memory of his wife dying of cancer hits Ricky hard and he finally understands this is an illusion, making Corellin show himself. He offers Ricky to stay here forever, but Ricky refuses because it isn't real and thanks to Ellie he's learned to love again. After asking Corellin to bury the room, Ricky returns to the farm and Ellie. Sometime later, Tommy's family is at the cinema, but the movie suddenly is interrupted as Jennifer announces that it's time. Corellin appears to address the people of Earth one last time, telling them that they will evolve into a higher level of consciousness, meaning they'll die soon. As the children stand up and raise their hands to the sky, Corellin also informs them that the kids will all leave them and become superhuman, and that no more children will be born on Earth. At that moment, pregnant women realize they've lost their babies, and children begin floating upwards into the sky while ignoring their parents' pleas. However, Tommy manages to stay behind. Afterward, the family goes looking for Jerry and finds him at the church and the cemetery where his daughter is buried. He's really drunk and has already activated a bomb to blow up New Athens, saying humanity has no future without children. While Jake fails to make him see reason, Tommy explains he only stayed a few more minutes to say goodbye, and now he must join his sister too. Amy cries as Tommy floats up and then goes to stop Jake from canceling the bomb, agreeing that their time has come to an end and that at least they lived a good life. The couple holds hands while the bomb blows up, destroying New Athens completely while nearby Jennifer is on top of a mountain, sending a beam of light up into the clouds as she absorbs the energy of every being on Earth. In the Overlord ship, Milo wakes up and immediately injects some medicine into his body to survive. When one of the Overlords finds him, he actually welcomes Milo warmly and shows him their home planet, which is dark and full of lava. He also explains that back on Earth, 40 years already passed while Milo was traveling. Then the Overlord says everything has already happened to Earth and that's always been the plan of the Overmind, which is the collective consciousness of the universe. The Overlords have spoken to it for thousands of years, and they visit worlds to change them when the Overmind orders it. Milo wants to know everything, so the alien takes him to see the Overmind, which is the brightest and most powerful beam of light yet. When the ship enters it, Milo finds himself in a white space talking to an orange shadow that represents the Overmind. To help Milo feel safer, it takes Rachel's form as it explains this is both God and evolution, that the children have moved on, and that the rest of the humans will be integrated into the cognitive melting pot. It's a lot for Milo to handle, and as he leaves the white space, he asks to be taken back to Earth before he passes out. When Milo wakes up, he discovers they're back on Earth and that around 85 years have passed since he left. The planet is abandoned and all of humanity has died out. The Overlords still want to help Milo and retrieve Rachel's aged frozen body from the rubble. When Milo goes to see her, he's so angry over what happened that he pulls at the necklace he gifted her and causes her body to shatter into pieces. This leaves a burnt mark on his hand. Afterward, Corellin shows up and confirms Milo is the last human. He says he envies mankind because his race can't go into the light like humans before offering Milo to stay there with them. However, Milo refuses and instead volunteers to return to Earth to report back findings of interest, since the Overlords never looked at a planet after destroying it before. After making the recording from the beginning of the story, Milo finds Jennifer still on top of the mountain sucking up all the energy from what's left of the Earth. The ground starts to crack and Milo realizes Earth will be destroyed literally, so he begs Corellin to save at least one thing of human culture as a memento. The Overlords play for Milo his memories, allowing him to relive his life and precious feelings. For a brief moment, Milo is happy again right before the planet explodes and nothing is left. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.